Barbosa Cities channel welcomes you to another deep reflection on urban planning, bringing the classic dynamics of engineering and city simulation to the critical challenges of the real world. The great metropolises should not be understood as mere static clusters of asphalt, concrete, and steel. They are true biological and dynamic organisms. For this immense social body to function in a healthy way, the flow of its inhabitants needs to happen continuously in a balanced and democratic manner. At the core of this vital mechanism lies public transportation, the true backbone that connects distant neighborhoods, reduces socioeconomic gaps, and sets the pace for sustainable development. This episode aims to uncover why public transit is the most decisive element for the success of modern cities, revealing the direct impact that transportation planning has on the daily lives of every citizen. Don't forget to leave your like and your hype here at the beginning of this video. And once again, let's take Vale Central to new heights. And welcome to the 9th episode of this series, Designing a Capital. The need for transportation has accompanied the development of humanity since its earliest steps. Originally, individual mobility strictly depended on the strength of one's own legs. With the rise of the first civilizations and the domestication of animals, animal traction and the first carts expanded the geographic scale of cities, but kept fast travel as an exclusive privilege of the elites. While the aristocracy enjoyed ornate private carriages and the bourgeoisie used human-powered wheelchairs, known as sedan chairs, the overwhelming majority of the urban population walked along narrow, unhealthy, and congested medieval streets. This reality of segregation began to change in 1662 in the city of Paris, under the reign of Louis XIV, thanks to the intellect and social sensitivity of the French mathematician and philosopher Daguerre Pascal. Pascal conceived the world's first modern public transportation system, called the 5-cent carriages. Operated by a corporation founded in November 1661, the system introduced, for the first time in history, the concept of fixed and circular routes, predetermined departure times, and affordable fares, ensuring that the carriages would depart even if they were empty. Although the pioneering experiment faced violent reactions from the public, stones thrown at drivers, and legal restrictions that limited access for the less affluent classes, which led to the closure of operations. By around 1677, Pascal's legacy was established. The technical perception that regular and shared mobility is the main driver of integration and functioning of public space. Well, once again, all of ours. The pilot, who has now received the bodies of water in the course of its rivers in the last episode, to become a community of carriages. And since this episode is about public transportation, I want to start by addressing what we already have. On this topic, in each of the zones, we have 4 passenger stations. So here in the South Zone, there are 4 stations. In the North Zone, 4, East 4, West 4, totaling 16 passenger stations. And the train is really meant to be used for longer distances, usually serving the demand from the suburbs, from the outskirts of the cities. That's why it's located here, fulfilling its purpose. The cargo stations, it's worth mentioning, are at the 4 corners of the square here, so we have 4 cargo stations, also extremely well positioned. This circular train line will allow our passengers to move from one zone to another without having to go through the center. So it's here on the edge of the plan. Heading towards the center, folks, we have this First Avenue. And you'll notice that all the avenues here in our master plan are circular as well. And here, since this will be a suburban area, right? Both on this side and on the other side. I'm thinking of putting in lower capacity transportation. In this case, buses, but not just any regular bus line. Since it's going to be really straight on avenues that are huge corridors, it will fit perfectly. BRT taking a slightly more inward route in our master plan, still far from downtown. And it will transport people in an area that's not so dense and with lower capacity. Going more towards downtown, we get here, look, at our Beltway Avenue. It's a manual avenue built with separate lanes. It meets the other avenues at roundabouts, and it has express passages under the roundabouts. And it also connects to the cardinal entrances of the city through the Cardinal Park. So here, look, it's a lowered highway where you leave the city or head toward downtown. So these are very important points. And on the Belt Avenue, since we're a little closer to downtown, the demand here won't be so low anymore. I'm thinking about putting in a medium capacity mode, that is, a monorail. And it will fit very well here because we have this grassy space between the two lanes. Perfect for placing the beams in the stations. I'll talk about this later, but monorails are somewhat controversial in urban areas. And when it comes to efficient, high-quality public transportation, its use is very specific, okay? And there are many criticisms regarding its implementation. One of them is the very high cost of construction, when the transport capacity is often similar to a BRT bus corridor. Well done, costing much less than the monorail itself. In addition, because it is an elevated structure, there is also a lot of talk about visual degradation. If this were a real-life city, I would choose not to build a monorail, but instead create an express bus lane here on the Beltway. However, since the game offers us this option, and I know many of you might be upset if I abandon this mode of transport, I will choose to place it here on Beltway Avenue, alright? And moving the ring closer to the center, skipping a superblock here more towards the center, we have this avenue, which is the most central one before Park Avenue. And on it, I will choose, of course, a mass public transport system that's highly efficient, which is the subway, alright? The subway is exactly for this type of location. Central, dense areas that already have a lot of things built up, right? A lot of property has been built. And you can't just keep expropriating or changing the course of avenues too much because of the subway. It has the advantage of being built underground, keeping what's already above almost unchanged, right? Almost in its original form. It transports a lot of people. It's very efficient. The only downside is that it's expensive, right? Doing all this excavation ends up being very costly. So we're going to have a subway here in this ring. And around the park, we'll have a tram line. The tram line is also ideal for central areas and places with public walkways, like pedestrian streets, parks, squares. So I'm gonna do this here. Look, very accessible transportation, very easy to get on and off near the park, giving access to practically the whole downtown area via light rail, okay? So these are the plans for our circular lines. But we'll have more lines, which I'll explain in our transportation plan. I'm not going to explain it here in-game because it might get a little confusing. And by drawing it, I think it'll be easier to understand.
Go.
Western modernity, however, has followed a path of worshipping private cars, promoting a historical mistake whose consequences are felt daily in major capitals. Urban planning focused on overpasses, tunnels, and widening avenues. It is based on the false premise that expanding physical space for cars can solve traffic problems. The phenomenon that debunks this logic is induced demand, or the fundamental law of road congestion. Scientifically established, the concept shows that increasing a road's capacity attracts proportionally more cars to it, canceling out any temporary flow and promoting unplanned urban sprawl. Urban highways and the creation of suburbs. Two topics we've already covered here in episodes of Central Valley. Mathematically, the relationship of induced traffic can be represented by the following equation for the elasticity of demand for road travel, where V represents the volume of traffic generated, C represents the physical capacity of the infrastructure and symbolizes the elasticity of demand in relation to capacity. In large metropolitan regions, elasticity approaches 1.0, indicating that any opening of new lanes generates additional traffic in the same proportion in a short period, neutralizing the investments. And I'm copying because I honestly don't know anything about formulas or exact sciences in general. The data from the 2022 demographic census highlight this structural mismatch in Brazil. About 32% of Brazilians who need to commute regularly to work use private cars, while only 21.4% use buses, resulting in inefficient use of the available infrastructure. This minority group of private cars occupies about 80% of the road space in cities, creating colossal bottlenecks that stifle the economy and social well-being. The annual economic impact of this congestion model is extremely severe for Brazilian metropolises. In the metropolitan region of São Paulo, the economic cost of traffic reaches 40 billion reais per year. This is a loss of 7.5% of the GDP of the São Paulo metropolitan region, or 1% of Brazil's GDP, lost in a daily average of 300 kilometers of traffic jams. Think about how many subways, how many train lines, quality buses and circulation could be built and improved with an investment of that size. The losses from this road-focused choice go beyond just the financial and productive aspects. The opening of large road arteries destroys established neighborhoods, creates insurmountable physical barriers for pedestrians, and increases noise and air pollution. For human health, chronic dependence on cars leads to a sedentary lifestyle and an alarming rise in psychosomatic illnesses. The chronic stress resulting from idle hours and slow traffic increases levels of anxiety, depression, and mental fatigue, while the emission of carbon dioxide deteriorates the cardiovascular and respiratory health of millions of inhabitants. High-capacity public transportation emerges as the only spatial and social solution for this crisis, because a single bus or subway car is capable of removing dozens of private vehicles from circulation, optimizing the design of cities and clearing up spaces for people to spend time together. In the beginning, there was nothing, and then our city emerged. I'm here in Photoshop so we can draw our public transportation line plan, our public transportation map of Vale Central. You can see that you can view all the streets, all the super blocks, avenues, parks, and so on. Well, I even painted the park green here, right, to make it easier to see. And here we already have our line, the railway line, right? The train line in red. It will be our red line 1 with the railway train mode. Then, as I mentioned back in the city, we have a lower circular line here in yellow representing our BRT line 2. And here in the even more central ring, we will have our orange line 3 of monorail. If you notice, the choice of colors is because red is a stronger color, indicating that it carries many passengers. Yellow is a lighter color, right, indicating that it carries fewer passengers, supports a lower demand. And orange is the middle ground, right? It's a medium demand. That's why these initial colors were chosen. Then we have our line 4 green, which is the circular subway on the last circular track before our Line 5 lilac here of the tram. For the subway, I chose green because it goes underground. There's not that much degradation, so I leave it green. And lilac is because the tram in the game is lilac, so I associate the two colors a lot. The color with the mode of transport because of city's skylines itself. Remember when I said we'd have more lines and I'd explain it here in the drawing? Well, these lines exist because none of them here are being connected, right? None of them have transfers between one line and another, or between one mode and another, which we've already seen is essential for the ideal functioning of a public transportation plan. So now I'm going to make cross lines instead of circular ones. With what? With the subway, because it's the most efficient. It transports the most people and it causes the least degradation, especially in central areas. That's why our cross lines will be subway lines. We will have the North-South Subway Line 6, and then I also chose a green color, okay? Which will start here in the south and go all the way to the north, in an almost perfectly straight line, just at the beginning and at the end. We have this break, because it wouldn't make sense for me to continue this subway line all the way up here, since we have a train line going this way, so I decided to make the connection with the train station both here in the north and down here in the south as well. And on top of that, we can already get a connection not only with the train, but also with the BRT, the monorail, the other circular subway line, and the BRT, right? So north and south are connected. A direct line leaving here from each Cardinal Park. And we'll also have our subway line 7, but this one will be east-west. I also left it in the same color, this emerald green, because these are the city's cardinal lines, so I left both in the same color. It will follow the same route, but in the east-west direction, connecting all the lines and train stations. Then we will have 2 more subway lines. Line 8, which is this one here, see diagonally, where I chose a more olive green, right? It will also connect a train station with the BRT, with the monorail, with the circular subway line, with the LRT, and the Cardinal line, east, west, north, south, also from the subway, here in the park. And then it will follow the route, practically mirroring the other side. So we will get this first diagonal line, and then line 9 in diagonal, also covering this other side here. So it's basically a northwest, southeast, northeast, southwest, okay? And that's how our map looks in the end. I think it's really good. I think there are lines going everywhere. Everyone will be well served and just a few meters away from one of the lines of our public transportation. Now comes the part about the stations, guys. We'll have here, look, several connections that are being represented here with these dotted squares. Each of these will be a different station, serving the population and acting as a hub, as a transfer building for switching from one mode to another, from one line to another. Of course, we won't have only the connection stations, we'll also have stations that don't have any connections, which are represented, look, by these little circles, right? So the stations with connections are the square ones, and the ones without connections are these little circles. There will be lines here that will basically have only stations with connections, okay? And the farther from the center, look, the fewer connections we have, which is natural. This happens in every public transportation plan in every city. And the closer to the center, the more connections we'll have. So it's gonna look like this. You can pause here or take a screenshot if you want to see it better. And now we have to go into the game to start sketching out all these lines. The structuring of an efficient transportation network requires urban planning to address the different modes of transportation in an integrated way. Each technology has an ideal range of capacity, cost, and flexibility, and they should cooperate with each other to structure the city's roads. The subway has an operational capacity of 60,000 passengers per hour in each direction. It is ideal for major arterial corridors in areas of very high density within cities. It has unbeatable commercial speed, complete separation from traffic, and high reliability. The train can also carry up to 50,000 passengers per hour, but it is more suitable for long-distance connections, usually between suburbs or satellite cities that orbit the larger city. Buses, when combined with corridors and dedicated lanes, or the so-called BRTs, can carry up to 40,000 passengers per hour. They are ideal for main routes with medium and high demand and are very useful because of their feeder lines that go directly into the neighborhoods. They have low implementation costs and extremely high operational flexibility. The tram or LRT can carry up to 30,000 passengers per hour. It is ideal for revitalized downtown areas and zones with shared traffic with pedestrians, the famous pedestrian malls. In addition to having zero pollutant emissions and low noise levels, it also enhances the urban aesthetics of the area. In city skylines, we also have the monorail. Here in the city of São Paulo, we also have a monorail. It can transport up to 40,000 people per hour in each direction, making it ideal for medium to high demand, especially in areas with steep terrain and narrow road space. The main advantage is the elevated track, which overcomes steep slopes and inclines without the need for deep excavations. And of course, we will take advantage of all these modes of transportation within Vale Central. To adapt the stations we have here on the railway to the connections we will have between this train track and the subway's underground track, I had to replace the vanilla stations that were here and subscribe to assets from the workshop. So the train stations are officially the first workshop assets here in Vale Central. And man, it was really hard to find a train station that offered this horizontal passage for the train track and a vertical passage for the subway track. And I ended up finding it, which is exactly this one right here, as you can see. Even though we have two platforms down here and only use one, it will work. It will fit this purpose very well. It's a beautiful station with a glass roof here, two platforms, one on each side, benches, and we even have an escalator, which obviously gives access to the subway station so passengers can transfer. And where there is no connection to the subway, it will be this station that came in a Japanese station's DLC, if I'm not mistaken. So even though it's custom content, it's not a workshop item. And I thought it really looks like something from the suburbs, right? It's well centered here at the end of the avenue with a crosswalk, and tell me it doesn't have that suburban station vibe. That's why I ended up choosing it instead of the traditional vanilla station, which is pretty bland. Well, we've solved the issue with train line 1. Let's move on to BRT line 2, which will be here on this avenue. Officially in the game, we have this BRT avenue here with the exclusive bus lane. However, this lane is on the side, and I wanted a center-running bus lane. Then you might ask me, Barbosa, but what's the difference? The difference is that when the lane is on the side, what can happen is this. The guy who's here in a car might want to turn onto the street, so he's gonna cut off the bus here, right? So when this dedicated bus lane is here in the center, the flow ends up being continuous. Even when this street here is one way, because you can't just cross from here to there. So I had to sign up for the workshop on this road here. Officially, according to the workshop item that we sign up for, it's to use here with the bus lane in the center. When our lane reaches the roundabouts here, we're going to have to make a change. I'm thinking about putting in a direct passage, right? So that the bus doesn't have to go through the roundabout. But then I'll have to change these two markings on the asphalt here. And then, with all the signage applied, look how nice it would look. Ready to receive the BRT vehicles here. And it's a beautiful thing to see this big corridor and the buses going straight ahead. But to make it even nicer, we can add a few small details. These two streets here, look, are the central streets of the superblock. One goes one way and the other comes back, and they meet in the center of the superblock, along with the other two central streets, but those are horizontal, right? These are the central vertical streets that meet the central horizontal streets. So it's a very important road. That's why I'm allowing the crossing here, look, from one side to the other. These other two corners, this one here, right? Just as you leave the roundabout and this one here, they can be closed. Because these streets, they don't cross the avenue here in front, you see? That's why it can be a more local street. And since they won't allow crossing from one side to the other, I have to apply the rules here so vehicles don't make that prohibited maneuver. And it will stay like this way. To make the game look visually nice, right, I'm going to put this marking here to show, that it's prohibited, right? The crossing from one side to the other, keeping this concrete median continuous. On these two corners here, where it's allowed and encouraged to cross from one side to the other, the marking will be a little different, okay? It won't have the concrete island and will show the dashed red BRT lane. I think it can't get more self-explanatory than this. They're stopping, but there's nothing indicating that there's a stop here. That's why I went to the workshop and signed up for this concrete bus train shelter. Man, it can stay right here and it'll match this floor here in the central island of the avenue. I'll try to leave it right in the center here. And that's it. Look how elegant this stop looks here, huh? And whoever comes from the other side will also get a stop here, covered, right? Protect people from the sun and the rain, all right? And look how cool it is with both buses stopping here under the shelter. In case you're wondering, Barboza, why is one at that end and the other at the opposite end? Why don't you put both stops in the center? First, because for people to access the bus stop here, they'll have to cross the crosswalk. If I put it in the middle, the walk will be longer to get there. Second, when the bus stops at the end of the road, using this one here as an example, I leave plenty of space behind it to eventually fit a line of buses, right? We know how it is. In real life and in cities' skylines, when there are too many buses on the line or they're not well spaced out, they get bunched up. By bunching up here, there's plenty of space before the corner, right? So it doesn't block the corner and the crosswalk here. That's why I placed the stops close to the corners. Hey, Barbosa, but the avenues in Vale Central are so tree-lined. And now with the BRT, the avenue lost its trees. That's why we can customize it here too with the intersection marking tool. I made a customization where we have trees here in the median, and we can apply it here, look, to the whole street. Let's see how it looks. Check it out. It's much better, right? And then the buses are running under the shade, a corridor of trees. Look at this first-person view. Doesn't that look awesome? Even for the people who are going to wait here at the stop, they'll also be in the shade of the shelter, right? And the trees will cool things down here. I think there will be a nice breeze. People won't have a heat island problem around here, right? Our BRT corridor is finally fully operational, and with let's see here, 60 vehicles at 52 stops. We have a line extension of 32 kilometers. That's 32 kilometers of line. Each bus carries up to 75 people. If all the buses are full, it's possible to transport up to 4,500 people per direction, or 9,000 people in total. 4,500 people per direction. If it's 32 kilometers, that means transporting 140 people per kilometer. Much more efficient, much more practical than cars, isn't it? And it's also a solution. The BRT, the bus corridor, is a very cheap and versatile solution to implement. Despite the theoretical qualities of each technology, transportation planning is often affected by public market pitfalls that result in monumental white elephants. The monorail exemplifies how a visually attractive mobility project can generate highly negative results due to its engineering complexity, high costs, and severe lack of integration. Brazilian cities provide dramatic examples of this misguided choice. In Poços de Caldas, Minas Gerais, the 6-kilometer private monorail operated only between 2000 and 2003, before being permanently deactivated. In Manaus, Amazonas, the planned 20-kilometer route was abandoned after the technology provider went bankrupt. Railway resulting only in Manaus, the route after route of N. In the capital of São Paulo, the implementation of Line 17 Gold, designed as a legacy for the World Cup back in 2014, faced more than a decade of delays and billion-dollar expenses. Its columns and elevated tracks became visual scars that degraded the avenues at ground level, serving as shelter and creating a strong sense of urban abandonment. Line 15 Silver, although in operation, has accumulated delays. Operational accidents, chronic schedule delays and addendums that raised its implementation cost to the mark of 265 million Rs per kilometer. Internationally, the Mumbai monorail in India suffers from a demand of only 10% of what was expected, a direct consequence of the total lack of physical and fare integration with the pre-existing railways. These failures show that elevated concrete structures create a huge visual barrier, blocking sunlight and oppressing pedestrian circulation, which directly clashes with the trend in modern global cities to demolish elevated structures in order to enhance the human scale at ground level. Shall we use the cost of the São Paulo monorail as an example for our comparison exercise here? 265 million reais per kilometer is much more expensive than the cost of implementing a BRT corridor, for example, which can cost up to 30 million reais per kilometer. The São Paulo Silver Line 15 is almost 16 kilometers long. With that same amount, it would be possible to implement 140 kilometers of BRT bus corridor. The Silver Line 15 monorail carries an average of 314,000 people per day. Compared to other bus lines in the city, those 150 kilometers of BRT could transport more than 4 million people daily. The monorail results in poor reliability due to its susceptibility to errors and operational accidents, while the MTU records 75% approval there in the São Mateus region. Well, our monorail will be this orange line here. It will be a circular line. And if before, on the BRT, we had one stop with a connection, and two or even three without a connection, this interval will be shorter on the monorail. We will basically have one station with a connection to the subway, one station without a connection, one with a connection, and one without a connection. It will be kind of alternating. One of these connections will be here with the north-south line, and the other connection will be with the diagonal lines. And, well, we have some problems. I signed up for several types of monorail stations, and to my surprise, there are very few types of stations in the workshop, okay? And I ended up being stuck with very few options. Another problem we have is that there isn't a station with the connection we want, which is a subway connection. Only monorail and subway fit exactly into this situation here, right? Because we're going to have this line making a curve here, and the subway station needs to connect to a subway line coming from down there. It's going to come out from here, curve here, have a connection with the BRT here, and the connection with the station. It's an asset that doesn't exist, so I'll need to make my own connection. Besides that, there's the challenge of the land here, because it's land where it passes through. Our sunken highway ends up physically competing for space with the subway tunnel, which is also lowered, right? Underground. So that makes me take this section of the sunken highway underground. It's all going to be a matter of optimizing space, okay? And this section here up to the access ramp exit will be underground. And to put the station right here in the middle, I'm going to put a pedestrian street from here to here so we can add a street and can work in this space. The monorail station that I chose to be the station for subway connections is this one, okay? It's a really beautiful station. It has two platforms, and it's crosswise. It's going to look like this. So I have to make a street here in the middle to fit it properly, right? Here, it's exactly at this point, and I'll show you how beautiful it really is. Down here, this promenade even looks like it's part of the station, right? Because it's a white sidewalk and it matches these white poles here and the glass. I think it's a really cool station, okay? And if we're talking about architecture, this open space we have here lets us see exactly the direction of the highway on both sides, right? To see the city in the future, the buildings when they're built. So it's this open space in the architecture here that allows for a panoramic view, okay? So I'll need to remove this pedestrian street and then redo it with two streets. The idea is to make, look, an open space here in the middle, precisely so I can put a station here that's integrated, okay? That's why I subscribe to these mods here, which are platforms that are a bit lower. This one here is at a depth of 24 meters, and this one here is at 36 meters. The 24-meter one is already enough. You can see that the platform no longer collides down there with the highway. It's lower than the highway. So it's going to be a really good solution for us here. Later on, we'll add a lot more detail to all this, but you can put it here, look, as if it were a winter garden inside the station. That looks nice too. And look, it's a really easy connection to make, okay? It's not the same asset, it's not integrated into the same asset, but people will be able to get off easily and switch modes down here without any trouble. And now that we have our monorail station here, I'm going to extend this subway line all the way here, right? The train passing by the BRT, which is what's in our plan. That's why I'm going to put a station right here, at this roundabout where we have a stop. I'll put the station here. So we have a terminal station here and the monorail station here. We just need to connect everything with tunnels, right? I'll bring it from here to here, and with the help of the network multi-tool mod, connect that BRT station to the monorail station as well. See? A really, really smooth curve for the subway to make up to here, right? It's going to curve over here, go into this avenue, connect with the BRT, and then connect at another station with the train tracks. Here we have the station that will connect with the diagonal line subway. And now, right, here in our Cardinal Parks, this track will come up to here. We have to build the station that will connect with our subway. North-South line, right? Future North-South line, which doesn't exist yet, and this station will be located around here. I've already created, look, the opening in the walkway here, ready to receive our subway station a little lower, so it doesn't interfere with the express passage, right? Right from the tunnel here that enters the city. Well, this tunnel will come from here, it will pass through the station, and then it will go, over here connecting with the BRT, and then over here with this train station according to our map. Now we're working on this part here, right? Our connection with the monorail, the connection here with the BRT, and the connection here with the train tracks. So it's this part here, look, this axis that we're working on. Exactly. Look, this one right here. And then I'm going to change this BRT corridor a little bit. I'll end up removing it so we can place the station centered on the road, on the central island of the road. For that, I'll have to separate both directions, like this, on different lanes, at least in this section here by the station, right, which will be placed here diagonally. So we need, look, a station here with a diagonal platform. And fortunately, we also have this option here thanks to the modders. So it doesn't look dull. We can customize it right here with some grassy flower beds with trees and with our shelters here at the stop. I'm going to make the markings on the asphalt here as well, so we have the BRT signage on both sides and keep it continuous all the way through. After all, if we're going to do it right, we should do it well here. Look how nice it is, the signage all in place. The reversal of urban chaos is entirely possible when there is political determination and the application of proper technical criteria to prioritize sustainable transportation. On the international stage, 3 major cities have redefined the relationship their residents have with urban mobility. In Medellin, Colombia, the city overcame deep geographic segregation and historic urban violence through the concept of social urbanism. The city government implemented integrated cable car systems, connecting the peripheral slums located on the steep hillsides to the metro system in the Vale. This inclusion project reduced travel times from 2 hours to just 15 minutes. Integrating tens of thousands of residents into the formal economy and making room for public investments in parks, schools, and libraries. Appearing for the 3rd time in this series, Seoul in South Korea can already ask for its own theme song. You already know that the Metropolitan Administration, the City Hall, made the decision to demolish the 10-lane elevated expressway in the heart of the city to restore the historic stream. And the removal of the road infrastructure, which handled more than 170,000 vehicles daily, reduced overall traffic and led to a 15% increase in public transportation use, significantly lowering pollution levels and cooling the temperature in the central area by up to 3.3 degrees. This happened because, along with the work to reopen the river, A BRT line was installed along the bank. In Bogota, Colombia, the implementation of the Transmilenio system in the 1990s redefined rapid bus mobility on the global stage by creating fully exclusive lanes, prepayment, and fast boarding on elevated platforms. The city proved that a low-cost, road-based transit system could move passenger volumes comparable to heavy subways, serving as an international model of efficiency. In the Brazilian context, two capitals have established themselves as benchmarks for technical planning and innovation in sustainable transportation. The first one you already know. Curitiba in Paraná is internationally recognized for its pioneering integrated planning established back in the 1970s. The city structured its physical growth through the trinary road system, which consists of a central lane exclusively for express buses, bi-articulated buses, flanked by slow lanes for local traffic and two parallel one-way expressways for private traffic, just one block away. This integrated model directed residential densification along the rapid transit corridors, decentralizing the city in such a way that daily trips towards the city center dropped from 92 in 1974 to just 30 in 2003, ensuring that 84% of trips in the capital are made by public transport, bicycle, or on foot. In Fortaleza, Ceará, which has been identified by national research as the Brazilian capital with the best sustainable urban mobility rates, we have another case. Faced with the rapid growth of the vehicle fleet, Fortaleza invested heavily in data and technology to readjust speed limits on the roads, implement smart traffic lights that prioritize public transportation at intersections, and expand its cycling network from a modest 68 kilometers in 2013 to more than 410 kilometers today. This synergy between bike lanes, dedicated bus lanes, and modal integration in 2014. The levels of air pollution coming from the transportation sector. All right, Barbosa, but what about here in Vale Central? How will it be? When designing a new urban center from scratch, the guidelines of contemporary urbanism reject traditional planning, focused on the segregation of uses and peripheral sprawl. The technical methodology? A recommended technique to avoid future traffic crises is sustainable transport-oriented development, or STOD, which aims to create compact, connected, and coordinated cities. From the perspective of STOD, urban planning adopts strategic densification and mixed land use as primary technical criteria. Residences, businesses, offices, and public services should be concentrated exclusively in the immediate surroundings of high-capacity public transport corridors. This allows most daily commutes to take place over short distances, eliminating the dependence on individual motorized transport. In the geometric design of the streets, blocks should be short and structured on a strictly human scale, ensuring wide sidewalks and tree planting for thermal comfort. And meanwhile, movement. Public transportation, the main ones in the system, should lead pedestrians directly and safely to the rapid transit stations. The transfer between modes at stations with physical, fare, and technological integration should be free of operational barriers, allowing citizens to move smoothly between walking, cycling, and the rail or bus corridor. The main benefit of this prior planning is the elimination of future costs with expropriations and the guarantee of a safe road environment, which reduces traffic accidents, lowering mobility costs by about 10, and actively combating and reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the very beginning of the city. And this whole process, both here at the station in the Cardinal Parks and at the station on the Diagonal Highway, I will have to repeat in every corner of the map. So here, it's already done. Here, it's already done. Here it's already done, and here it's also already done. Look, it's all applied, and it was a huge amount of work to do this. It became a road with a monorail, but now without trees, man. And I'm gonna start this as promised, okay? I'm going to put a row of trees like this, exactly like this, and it's actually going to be even better. Because instead of having one row of trees, now we're going to have 2 rows of trees, one on each side. And it will even protect, in a way, the businesses here from the noise and visual pollution. People who live nearby as well, on the streets behind, will also benefit. And there will be this green corridor here where the monorail will run. And now all that's left is for us to come here, right in the middle, halfway between the 2 stations, and put in the station that doesn't have a connection to the subway. Well, it was hard to find a monorail station that would fit here and have the tracks centered, to make it symmetrical and visually appealing. But I found this Dubai station monorail here, which fits perfectly, man. And it's already extremely aligned with the track. I'm just noticing now, actually, that there's a height difference, man. Yeah, I'm gonna have to fix this height difference here, but I'll make it really smooth using the network multi-tool with the slope creation tool. And it's going to slope gently. See, you can barely tell, right? Since the ramp is really long, it doesn't even look like this monorail is going up. Right. The slope really is very slight, and when it gets here, it will stop at the station and serve people with these automatic doors, right? So you can't see from the inside. But it was the station that fit here, the station that worked and ended up fitting really well between the 2 lanes of our Beltway Avenue. I placed all the stations, now just so we can see it working. Here, look, creating the line. Look, I've already made the outbound line. Now I'm going to create the return line. Done, line completed. I'm going to hit play here so we can already make one. Look here, there's already a monorail here. I also need to subscribe to some different type of monorail, so we can differentiate the cars in our fleet from this vanilla one. Ugly, right? I think it's really ugly and horrible, but here it is. Let's follow this first-person view where the monorail just glides over the treetops in a very elegant way. Look at that, how cool our monorail looks going through the streets of Vale Central. And our public transportation. It's taking shape. It's looking really nice. But unfortunately, I'll have to end the episode here and leave the rest for another part. Part 2, this episode is a lot of work. It's getting really long because we're putting a lot of things together in a single video. Even though the theme is public transportation, we're talking, and doing a lot of things. All in the same video, right? Train, subway, monorail, bus, and I need to release this video soon. So stay tuned. Maybe the gap between part 1 and part 2 of public transportation here in Vale Central won't be that long, and that's it, okay guys? Ultimately, technical decisions in traffic engineering and urban planning translate into deeply human choices. A truly developed city is not one where the most vulnerable citizens depend on buying a private car to travel safely and quickly, but rather one where everyone shares the same sidewalks, train cars, and roads in an equal, peaceful, and dignified way. The future of metropolises depends directly on the transition from individual asphalt to public spaces for democratic coexistence. By filling the streets, using public transportation, and valuing shared movement, people redefine the meaning of community. A healthy and inclusive city for everyone is shaped through collective movement.